Hi, my name is John Placido.
And I'm Carrie Talbot.
We're attorneys at Legal Assistance of Western New York, and we're working with the Small Business Development Center at Jamestown Community College to offer this training on forming a not-for-profit organization in New York State. We hope that this training will be a helpful tool for community groups who want to become incorporated in New York as not-for-profit corporations and then obtain 501c3 tax-exempt status. That said, please note that any information included in this video does not constitute legal advice, and it doesn't create an attorney-client relationship with Law New York. As always, keep in mind that laws and regulations, especially those governing nonprofits, do change frequently. Be sure to consider this when you're watching the video, and as always, if you have any questions, please follow up with an attorney.
This video is the first of 3 in our series on nonprofits. In it, we're going to give an overview of 3 important concepts when considering starting a nonprofit organization. First, we'll talk about whether it makes sense to start a nonprofit. Second, we're going to cover the types of nonprofits. And finally, we'll talk about the basic steps required to start a nonprofit. Check out the other videos for more detailed information on applying for nonprofit status in New York State and applying for tax-exempt status.
So first, there's the common initial question of whether you should start a nonprofit. Before starting a nonprofit, you should make sure that you have a clear goal in mind, and that there is a need in the community that isn't currently being met by other groups. There are pros and cons to starting a nonprofit. There are alternatives that you might want to consider, including working with already existing nonprofits, or starting or working with unincorporated community groups. Or lastly, working with an established nonprofit in a relationship called a fiscal sponsorship. If none of these work for you, a nonprofit may make sense. For help deciding whether to start a nonprofit organization, we often refer people to the New York State Small Business Development Center, where it can provide assistance with developing a business plan and advising an individual or group as to whether they're ready to take the next step to being a nonprofit.
Once you've decided you'd like to form a nonprofit, you should think about what type of nonprofit makes the most sense for your goals. You should decide if your organization should be a charitable or non-charitable nonprofit. Both organizations should be for non-financial gain. Charitable organizations are defined as those that are charitable, educational, religious, scientific, literary, cultural, or for the prevention of cruelty to children or animals. Non-charitable organizations are pretty much everything else that doesn't involve making a profit. This can include any number of the following purposes: civic, patriotic, political, social, fraternal, athletic, agricultural, or other. Both charitable and non-charitable organizations can become New York nonprofit corporations, and both of them can be exempt from paying federal income taxes. However, only charitable corporations can receive tax-deductible contributions from donors under 501c3. Additionally, non-charitable corporations sometimes have more discretion than charitable corporations when it comes to lobbying and other political activities. There are pros and cons to being charitable or non-charitable corporation, so you should consider what you want to accomplish as a nonprofit when making this decision. We will address more about these differences in part 3 of this series, which talks about federal tax exemption.
Now let's talk about the basic steps of becoming a nonprofit. When thinking about starting a nonprofit corporation in New York, you must understand the differences between the state laws on nonprofits and the federal laws on nonprofits. To get many of the benefits of becoming a nonprofit, you'll need to both incorporate as a nonprofit corporation with New York State under New York Nonprofit Law, Section 403, and apply to be tax exempt with the federal government under Internal Revenue Code 501c3. To incorporate as a nonprofit, you'll file papers with the New York Division of States to become a corporation. When your organization becomes a corporation, the state recognizes it as a legal corporate entity that is running for charitable or non-charitable purposes. Once it's recognized as a nonprofit, the owner of a nonprofit also has protections from personal responsibility for debts and lawsuits, as long as everything is set up correctly. However, doing this does not make your organization tax exempt. To become tax exempt under 501c3, your organization files for tax exempt status with the federal government by filing Form 1023 or Form 1023-EZ with the IRS. You can find these forms on the IRS website.
There are two major benefits to becoming tax exempt under 501c3. First, your corporation would be exempt from paying federal income taxes. Second, for charitable nonprofits, donations and contributions to your organization are tax deductible for the donor. Finally, you should keep in mind that you will have to take extra steps to get tax exemptions under state and local law for things like New York State income tax or any real property tax exemptions. In order to get these exemptions, you will need to apply for tax exemptions with New York State and your local government. You should also keep in mind that trusts and unincorporated associations, or organizations that have not formed a nonprofit corporation under state law, are still eligible to obtain tax-exempt status under 501c3. The key question is always whether the organization is organized and operated to further one or more exempt purposes. However, the majority of organizations start out by incorporating as a nonprofit under state law first, before applying for tax-exempt status through the federal government. That is what we generally advise most new organizations to do, which is why our focus is on nonprofit incorporation first.
So, just to summarize, becoming a New York nonprofit corporation is a step you take to incorporate under state laws. The second step, obtaining federal tax-exempt status, is a follow-up step that generally takes place after that. Finally, obtaining state and local tax-exempt status are extra steps that you must take separately. To get more detailed information on those steps, please watch part 2 and 3 of this video series. Should you need further guidance, please be sure to contact legal counsel. Thank you.